There's a very specific sound when Emily Rhodes's pearl-white Range Rover Velar tears through my pasture. Metal groaning, gravel spitting, and my cows bellowing like they're cursing in bovine. This was the fourth time in less than 2 weeks. I stood at the barn door, hand resting on my rusted shovel, watching that white SUV cut across the muddy field like she owned the place. Dust kicked up in clouds, my Jersey herd scattered, and fence post number 4 snapped clean under her 22-inch wheels. Emily didn't slow down. She laughed through the tinted window, blonde hair whipping in her climate-controlled breeze, looking every bit the queen of Meadowbrook Estates HOA.
She thought the rules didn't apply to her, and certainly didn't account for the farmer named Tom Bennett, standing there with half a smile. I didn't yell, didn't chase, didn't call the cops again. I just had an idea and a free afternoon. 3 days later, when that familiar engine roared to life, I stood on my porch with coffee, waiting. The motion sensor blinked red, and then splash. The entire irrigation system kicked on, dousing that 6-figure SUV and my so-called HOA queen in a wall of water. Ever seen a high-end Karen get schooled in broad daylight? Comment below if you think this sprinkler system should go commercial. 3 days later, when that familiar engine roared to life, I stood on my porch with coffee, waiting. The motion sensor blinked red, and then splash. The entire irrigation system kicked on, dousing that 6-figure SUV and my so-called HOA queen in a wall of water. Ever seen a high-end Karen get schooled in broad daylight? Comment below if you think this sprinkler system should go commercial. The pre-dawn air smelled like dew and diesel. I was halfway through feeding the herd when I heard it. That low rumble of an expensive engine taking the shortcut. It had no business taking. 6:45 a.m. on a Monday in July. The sun barely cleared the tree line. Mist still hanging over the ryegrass. And here came trouble again. I didn't need to look up to know it was her. 4 times in 14 days. Same tire tracks. Same disregard. My hand tightened around the feed bucket. The cows knew the routine by now. They bolted before the Range Rover even came into full view, scattering toward the far fence like they'd seen a predator. Smart animals. Smarter than some people. I walked the path after she was gone. Boots squelching in the mud she'd churned up. The 4th fence post in 2 weeks, snapped clean at the base. I crouched down and ran my fingers over the tire tread, imprinted in the soft earth. Pirelli P0. High-performance tires. Only on luxury SUVs. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo. The way I'd done the last 3 times. This wasn't random. This was a pattern. My dad built this fence in 1987. 37 years it stood through hurricanes, ice storms, and the occasional drunk driver veering off Route 264. Now it was dying under the wheels of a Range Rover because someone couldn't be bothered to take the long way around. I straightened up and looked toward the old security camera mounted outside the barn. It hadn't worked since my wife died 3 years ago. Maybe it was time to fix that. Sarah came out of the house as I was coiling up the spare wire I'd need. She had her laptop tucked under one arm and a mug of coffee in the other. 17 years old, sharp as a tack, and heading to NC State on a full ride in 6 weeks. She glanced at the broken post, then at me. "How many times now?" she asked. 4, I said. "In 2 weeks." She sipped her coffee, eyes narrowing the way her mother's used to when she was working through a problem. "You call the cops yet?" I nodded. "Last time. Deputy said it's hard to prove trespassing without catching someone in the act." Sarah looked at the camera, then back at me. A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "So let's catch them." By mid-morning, I was at the hardware store, standing in the security aisle with a shopping list I'd written on the back of a feed invoice. 1 4-camera Reolink system with 4K resolution and motion detection. 128 gigabyte memory card, mounting brackets. Weatherproof housing. The kid at the counter rang it up without comment, but I caught him glancing at the mud still caked on my boots. On the way home, I passed the entrance to Meadowbrook Estates, that gleaming subdivision that sprang up in 2019. right on the edge of my family's land. The sign read, "A pristine community," in gold lettering, solar lights lining the brick columns. Pristine. I wondered if they knew their HOA president was tearing through private property like it was a county road. Sarah met me in the driveway when I got back. She'd been busy. Her laptop was open on the porch railing, screen filled with legal text. "Dad, you know HOAs can fine members up to $250 a day for violating community rules." I set the camera box down and leaned against the truck. "That's so." She turned the screen toward me. "This is their bylaw handbook, Section 7.3. Trespassing on private property adjacent to the community is explicitly prohibited." I looked at the document, then at my daughter. She had that look, the one that said she'd found something good. I smiled. "Interesting." She closed the laptop. "You installing that today?" I nodded. "Yep. Need help?" "Always." By evening, the camera was mounted high on the barn, angled perfectly to cover the stretch of pasture Emily Rhodes liked to use as her personal shortcut. I tested the motion detection from my phone, watching the live feed as Sarah walked through the frame. The alert pinged immediately. Clear as day. 4K resolution meant I could read a license plate from 100 feet. Sarah came back, shaking water from her hair where the test sprinkler had caught her. "Works great," she said, laughing. I looked at the image on my phone. Crystal clear. Time stamped. Geo-tagged. "Yeah," I said. "It does." That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a folder I'd started weeks ago. Inside were photos of the previous 3 incidents, estimates for fence repairs, and a printed satellite map showing the exact route Emily took from Meadowbrook's East Gate to Highway 264. Cutting through my land saved her 1.9 miles, a minute and a half, maybe 2. Not worth the damage she caused, but apparently worth the convenience. I opened my email and drafted a message to the HOA, professional and to the point. I attached the photos, the damage estimates, and a polite request that residents respect property boundaries. Then I saved it to drafts without sending. Not yet. Sarah came into the kitchen with her phone. "Dad, look at this." She showed me an email notification. Meadowbrook Estates HOA. Subject line, courtesy notice of violation. I opened it and read. It was addressed to me. They were citing my farm equipment visible from Oakmont Drive as non-compliant with community aesthetic standards, requesting voluntary remediation within 30 days to maintain property values. It was signed by Emily Rhodes, HOA president. I read it twice, then set the phone down. I didn't slam the table, didn't curse, just folded my hands and looked out the window at the barn my grandfather built. Sarah's voice was tight. "They're threatening you for having a farm while she's destroying your property." I nodded slowly. "Seems that way. What are you going to do?" I picked up the phone again, opened my drafts, and looked at the email I'd written to the HOA. Then I deleted it. "Not that," I said. Sarah sat down across from me. "Then what?" I looked at her, and for the first time in 2 weeks, I felt something other than frustration. I felt clarity. I'm going to wait for strike 5. The camera caught her 24 hours later. I was in the milking barn at 7:15 Thursday morning when my phone buzzed with the motion alert. I wiped my hands on my jeans and pulled it up. 47 seconds of perfect 4K footage. The Range Rover appeared from the northeast corner at 7:03 a.m., rolling through the gap in the trees where Emily always entered. She was looking down at her phone, one hand on the wheel. Speed steady around 25 miles per hour. At the 8-second mark, her front tire clipped the temporary electric fence I'd strung up for rotational grazing. The wire snapped, and she didn't even flinch, didn't slow down. At 15 seconds, she hit the mud patch where overnight rain had pooled. Water sprayed up over her hood. At 28 seconds, her passenger side mirror came within inches of my old tractor, parked exactly where it had been parked for 3 months. And at 35 seconds, the camera caught her face through the windshield, clear as a portrait. Emily Rhodes, texting while driving on private property. I saved the video to 3 different locations, then called the non-emergency line for the Wilson County Sheriff. Deputy Williams had been out twice already. He knew the situation. He said he'd swing by after lunch, I went back to work, but my mind was somewhere else, somewhere between satisfied and curious. This wasn't just trespassing anymore. North Carolina. General Statute 14-1, 59.12. Covered criminal trespass, but texting while driving, that was 20-1, 37.4a. Reckless driving in a private zone could fall under 20-140b. If she were a lawyer, I'd call this material evidence. But she wasn't a lawyer. Her husband was. Deputy Williams pulled up at 1:40 p.m. in his cruiser, the county seal, dusty from back roads. He was a decent man, mid-50s, been with the department longer than I'd been farming solo. He stepped out, adjusted his belt, and nodded. "Tom, deputy," I said, handing him my tablet with the video queued up. He watched it twice, his jaw tightening the second time. When it finished, he handed the tablet back and took off his hat. "That's clear as day," he said. "I can issue a citation for trespassing." I waited. There was a but coming. "But," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "Mrs. Rhodes is HOA president. Her husband's Marcus Rhodes, partner at Whitfield & Associates. They've got pull in this county." I kept my voice level. "Does the law care about pull?" Williams met my eyes. He looked tired. "No, but I'm telling you, be ready for pushback. People like that don't take citations quietly." He pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back in pen. "Document everything. I mean, everything." He handed it to me. On the back it said, "Keep records." I pocketed it. "Already am." After he left, I stood in the driveway for a minute, watching his cruiser disappear down the road. The air smelled like cut grass and coming rain. Sarah's car pulled in a few minutes later. She'd been at the library all morning, working on scholarship paperwork. She got out with her backpack and a thick manila folder. "Research," she said, dropping it on the kitchen table. Inside were printouts, North Carolina trespassing statutes, Meadowbrook Estates HOA bylaws, downloaded from the county registrar's website, a satellite map with distance measurements. She'd highlighted sections in yellow. HOA bylaw 12.4, she read aloud. "Members must respect property boundaries of adjacent landowners." I took a photo of the page with my phone and saved it to a folder I'd labeled Rhodes Case. Then I opened a spreadsheet and added the new incident. Date, time, video file name, estimated damage, 4 violations, $340 in repairs so far, not counting labor. Sarah leaned over my shoulder. "You're building a case." "I'm keeping records," I said. She smiled. "Same thing." That evening I was fixing a section of fence near the road when I heard tires on gravel. A black Audi sedan slowed and stopped. The window rolled down. It was Marcus Rhodes. I'd seen him at county planning meetings before, always in a suit, always with a leather briefcase. He looked at me through expensive sunglasses. Engine idling. "Mr. Bennett? Mr. Rhodes?" There was a pause. He seemed to be measuring his words. "I understand there was an incident this morning involving my wife's vehicle." I leaned on the fence post. "4th incident. Actually." His jaw tightened. "Emily mentioned you've been having boundary concerns." I almost laughed. Boundary concerns? Like I was the one with the problem. "Your wife has been driving through my pasture for 2 weeks. I have video evidence and a sheriff's report." Marcus took off his sunglasses. For the first time, he didn't look like a lawyer. He looked like a man who knew his wife was wrong and didn't know how to say it. "I'll talk to her," he said quietly. "I appreciate that," I said, "but I'd appreciate her using the actual road more." He nodded, put his sunglasses back on, and drove away without another word. I watched him go, then went back to fixing the fence. Friday evening, the mail came late. I was washing up for dinner when Sarah brought in a thick envelope with the Meadowbrook Estates logo embossed on the front. Certified mail. I dried my hands and opened it. Final warning of violation. The letter was 2 pages, printed on heavy stock paper with gold trim. It cited my farm equipment visible from Oakmont Drive, my unkempt exterior structures, and a failure to maintain community aesthetic standards per bylaw 8.2 and 8.7. It demanded remediation within 14 days or face daily fines of $100 and potential legal action. It closed with, We trust you will act as a responsible neighbor. It was signed by Emily Rhodes, HOA president. I read it twice, then set it on the table next to my own stack of documents. 5 videos, 47 pages of printouts, a spreadsheet with $480 in documented damage, Deputy Williams's business card with "Keep Records" written on the back. Sarah read the letter over my shoulder, her face going red. They're going to fine you $100 a day for having a working farm while she destroys your property. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. Then I opened my laptop and typed a reply. Dear Mrs. Rhodes, thank you for your notice. I will review it in parallel with my own documentation of repeated trespassing incidents on my property. I'm sure we can find a mutually respectful resolution. Best regards, Tom Bennett. Sarah watched me type. Are you going to send it? Not yet, I said, saving it to drafts. I'm waiting. For what? I looked at the calendar on the wall. It was Friday. Emily's pattern was consistent. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. If the pattern held, she'd go through again. Monday morning, strike 5. I closed the laptop. For one more. The HOA meeting started at 7 p.m. Monday evening. I stood at the back of the Meadowbrook Estates clubhouse, folder under my arm, mud still on my boots despite Sarah's suggestion that I clean up. The room smelled like air freshener and fresh carpet. 200 seats. Maybe 40 people showed up. Most were scrolling their phones. Emily sat at the front table under the HOA logo projected on a screen, wearing a cream blazer and pearls, looking like she was chairing a corporate board instead of a neighborhood meeting. She was talking about the summer beautification project, gesturing to slides showing before and after photos of median landscaping. Everyone nodded politely. This was her kingdom. When she opened the floor for resident concerns, I raised my hand. Emily's smile flickered for half a second when she saw me, but she recovered fast. Yes, Mr. Bennett. I stood up. 40 pairs of eyes turned toward me. This man in work clothes who clearly didn't belong. Mrs. Rhodes, I'd like to address a property violation issue. Her smile stayed fixed. Mr. Bennett, this is a meeting for HOA residents. If you have a complaint about a community member, you should submit it through proper channels. I kept my voice even. I've tried. 5 times in 3 weeks. Someone's vehicle has crossed my land without permission, causing property damage. I have video evidence and sheriff documentation. The room went quiet. A few people glanced at each other. Marcus Rhodes sat 3 rows back, and I watched his shoulders tense. Emily's expression didn't change, but her voice took on a sharper edge. I'm sorry you're experiencing difficulties, but this forum is for internal HOA matters. Then she clicked to the next slide. It was a photo of my barn, taken from Oakmont Drive, zoomed in on the rust spots on the tin roof. Since you're here, she said smoothly, perhaps we can discuss community concerns about agricultural properties affecting our neighborhood's appearance and property values. She let that hang in the air. A woman in the 3rd row nodded. A man near the door folded his arms. I felt the room shift. Families invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in their homes here, Emily continued. It's reasonable to expect the surrounding environment to maintain certain standards. I looked at her, standing there in her designer blazer, and felt something cold settle in my chest. My farm has been here since 1987, I said, before this HOA existed, and it doesn't violate any county regulations. Emily's smile was ice. I'm not suggesting it's illegal, Mr. Bennett, just asking for courtesy between neighbors. Reckon that barn's been standing since before most folks here were born, I wanted to say, but I didn't. Instead, I said, and I'm asking for the same courtesy. Stay off my land. The room was silent. Marcus Rhodes looked like he wanted to disappear into his seat. Emily shuffled her papers. Thank you for your input. Next item on the agenda. I stayed for another 20 minutes, but no one spoke to me. When the meeting ended, people filtered out quickly, avoiding eye contact. I stood in the parking lot under the sodium lights, watching them get into their Audis and Teslas and BMWs. George Miller, an older man I'd seen at county meetings, approached slowly. He was probably 70, walked with a slight limp. You did the right thing in there, Tom, he said quietly, "but they don't fight fair." I looked at him. "Law's on my side." George shook his head. "Law doesn't have a voice in there. Money and connections do." He glanced back at the clubhouse, where Emily was still inside talking to her committee. "I got fined $500 for painting my house a non-approved color. They'll find a way to make your life difficult." He patted my shoulder and walked to his truck, leaving me alone under the lights. I sat in my F-150 for a few minutes before starting the engine. The radio played old country, some song about small towns and simpler times. Rain started to fall. Light at first, then heavier. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm. I thought about my dad, who bought this land in '76 and built the barn with his own hands. He used to say, "Never play someone else's game. Son, make your own rules." Figure she'll test my patience before long. The drive home took 15 minutes. Sarah was waiting on the porch, laptop open. "How'd it go?" I shook the rain off my jacket. "Not good." She looked up. "You giving up?" I met her eyes. "I've never given up on anything in my life, and I'm not starting now." I went to my office and opened my laptop. Google search North Carolina water rights agricultural use. The results filled the screen. Articles about irrigation law, state agriculture codes, permit regulations. I clicked through them one by one, rain drumming on the roof, while somewhere across the property line, Emily Rhodes probably thought she'd won. I didn't sleep much that night. By 3 a.m., I was at the kitchen table with a pot of coffee and a stack of printouts from the county extension office. Sarah found me there at 5:30, books spread out like I was cramming for an exam. North Carolina Agricultural Water Rights Handbook, Irrigation Systems for Small Farms, pages from the State Department of Agriculture website. She poured herself coffee and sat down without saying anything. Smart kid. She knew when to let me think. By the time the sun came up, I had the basic framework. North Carolina General Statute 14-159.12 covered criminal trespass, maximum $1,000 fine. But that required law enforcement, and Deputy Williams had made it clear which way the wind blew in this county. What I needed was something that didn't require anyone's permission, something legal, documented, and completely within my rights as a landowner. I opened Google Maps on my laptop and switched to satellite view. The path Emily took cut diagonally across 220 feet of my pasture. Entry point at the northeast corner where Oakmont Drive dead-ended. Exit point at my southwest gate leading to Highway 264. I traced it with my finger. She saved herself maybe 90 seconds by trespassing. 90 seconds that had cost me 4 fence posts, 1 electrical line, and countless hours of frustration. I pulled up my irrigation records next. The system my dad installed in 2005, designed for summer ryegrass when drought hit. Hadn't used it since my wife died in 2021. Too much to manage alone, but the infrastructure was still there. PVC pipes buried 6 inches down, connected to our permitted well. I walked outside as dawn broke fully, coffee mug in hand, and followed Emily's usual route. The ground was still damp from last night's rain. Every 20 feet or so, I could see where the old sprinkler heads used to be before I'd capped them off. The well pump still worked. I'd tested it last month. 45 psi, plenty of pressure. All I'd need was to reconnect the lines and add something to trigger them automatically. I stood there in the cool morning air, watching mist rise off the pasture, and felt something shift in my chest. Not anger anymore. Focus. By 7 a.m., I was back at my laptop, searching irrigation supplies. Motion-activated sprinkler systems designed to keep deer and raccoons out of gardens. The Orbit Yard Enforcer came up first. $45 each. Motion detection range 35 feet. Water spray 30 feet. Adjustable sensitivity. The reviews were solid. Works great on deer and persistent delivery drivers. I did the math. Emily's path was 220 feet long. Each unit covered roughly 30 feet. I'd need at least 7, maybe 8 for full coverage. Call it $360 plus PVC connectors and a timer valve. Within budget. I added them to my cart, but didn't check out yet. This wasn't something to rush. Then I stopped. My finger hovered over the mouse. What if someone argued this was a trap, that I'd deliberately set up an automated system knowing when she'd drive through? I opened a new tab and searched North Carolina booby trap laws. The statute came up immediately. 14-1, 59.2. Unlawful to set a trap intended to cause bodily harm. I read it 3 times. Bodily harm. Water from an irrigation system didn't qualify, but intent mattered. I dug deeper, reading case law summaries. Agricultural equipment operating during normal hours wasn't considered a trap. Automated deer deterrents were standard practice. As long as I had a legitimate agricultural purpose and proper signage, I was clear. I sat back and looked out the window at the barn. My dad's voice came back to me. Make your own rules, but don't break theirs. Reckon there's a difference between a trap and good timing. I was irrigating my pasture. If someone chose to drive through during watering hours, that was on them. I clicked purchase. 8 Orbit Yard Enforcers. Ship in 2 days. Then I made a list of everything else I'd need. 300 feet of half-inch PVC pipe, connectors, a solenoid valve with a timer, and signs. Lots of signs. By noon, I was at Lowe's, walking the irrigation aisle with a cart. The system came together in my head like a puzzle. Main line from the well, branching to each sensor point. Timer set for 6 to 8 a.m. daily, right when Emily usually came through. Motion sensors as backup triggers. Completely automatic. Completely legal. Sarah called while I was loading the truck. Dad, I've been thinking about this. Yeah. You're sure this is legal? Like completely sure? I appreciated her asking. I checked the statutes. Motion-activated irrigation for agricultural purposes is standard. I'll post warning signs every 40 feet. No one can say they weren't notified. There was a pause. But you know when she drives through. I loaded the last box. I can't control when people trespass. Sarah, I'm watering my grass. If someone happens to be there, that's their choice. Another pause. You're really doing this. I'm protecting my property. Within the law. That's all. She laughed quietly. Okay, I'll help you install it. Wednesday through Friday became a blur of quiet work and shared purpose. Sarah and I spent 3 days in the pasture, installing the system piece by piece. We didn't talk much, didn't need to. She held the measuring tape while I marked cuts on the old PVC pipes Dad had buried back in 2005. Handed me fittings before I asked. We moved together like we used to with her mom. That unspoken rhythm, where anticipation replaces instruction. By Thursday afternoon, the main line was reconnected, and 8 orbit sensors stood like sentries along Emily's path, spaced 30 feet apart on steel stakes driven deep into the ground. I adjusted each one to maximum sensitivity, while Sarah tested the coverage. Walking the route with her phone recording, sensor 1 caught her at the entry point. Hiss, water arced 30 feet, then 2, then 3. By sensor 8, she was laughing and drenched, hair plastered to her face. Works great, Dad, she said, wringing out her hoodie. I watched the playback on my phone. Perfect overlapping spray. 240 feet of coverage. Nothing could get through without getting soaked. Reckon that's one way to stay cool in July? She grinned, and for a moment, she looked exactly like her mother. Friday morning, I drove to the county extension office and got the agricultural water use notification signed by Mike Torres. Legal, documented, official. Friday afternoon, we installed 6 warning signs along the route. Yellow reflective plastic. Private property, no trespassing. Automatic irrigation. Active 6 to 8 a.m. daily. Motion-activated sprinklers in use. I photographed each one with GPS timestamps. 6 warnings. Figure if she ignores 6 signs, that's on her. Friday evening, after Sarah went inside to shower off the day's work, I stayed out in the pasture alone. The sun had set fully now, just the last purple glow on the horizon and the first stars coming out. I walked the entire route one more time, checking each sensor by hand, tapped the stakes to make sure they were solid, verified the spray angles, tested the timer sequence twice more. At 7 p.m., I stood at the barn and activated the manual override, watching all 8 sprinklers come to life in the growing darkness. The sound was different at night, more pronounced. Water hissing in the quiet, catching the barn lights and creating shifting shadows across the grass. I let it run for 2 minutes, then shut it down. Checked my phone. All 4 cameras had recorded perfectly. Clear footage, even in low light. I opened the spreadsheet one more time. $480 in damages, 5 documented trespassing incidents, 6 warning signs with GPS stamps, agricultural water use, notifications signed and filed, North Carolina statutes printed and highlighted. Everything legal, everything documented, everything ready. I called Mike Torres's cell, even though it was late. "Mike, it's Tom Bennett. Quick question. If my irrigation system runs 6 to 8 a.m. daily on a timer, and someone drives through during those hours, I'm clear, legally." "Right." He didn't hesitate. "Tom, you're watering your pasture during optimal agricultural hours. If someone trespasses during that time, that's on them. You've got signs posted, 6 of them. Then you're more than clear. You're textbook." I thanked him and hung up, stood there in the darkness, listening to the crickets and the occasional low from the barn. Tomorrow at 6 a.m., the timer would activate. By 7:15, if Emily followed her pattern, this would all be over, one way or another. I wasn't nervous, wasn't excited, just ready. I went inside, and for the first time in 3 weeks, I slept soundly. As we mounted the last sign at sunset, Sarah asked, "When does it go live?" I looked at the golden light painting the pasture. 6 a.m. Monday. If she follows her pattern, she'll drive through around 7:15. We stood there in the evening quiet, neither of us saying what we both knew. Monday was going to be very interesting. While we worked, I thought about what was happening a mile away in the Meadowbrook Estates clubhouse. I'd gotten a forwarded email from Linda Chen the night before. She was one of the quieter HOA members, someone who'd always seemed uncomfortable with Emily's heavy-handed approach. The email was an emergency meeting notice. Subject addressing ongoing community concerns. The agenda had one item: Tom Bennett's non-compliance with aesthetic standards. Emily was circling the wagons, building her case for fines and legal action. The meeting was set for 9 a.m. Friday. I wasn't invited. Didn't matter. I had my own plans. Thursday afternoon, I connected the timer valve, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. daily. Automatic. Once it was set, the system would run on its own. I added a manual override switch inside the barn, just in case. But I wouldn't need it. This wasn't about me standing out there with a hose. This was about a legitimate agricultural irrigation system doing exactly what it was designed to do: watering grass, protecting crops, operating during normal farming hours. If someone drove through during that window, well, that was unfortunate timing. I tested the full sequence one more time at 5 p.m. Timer activated, sensors armed, water pressure steady. The spray pattern covered every inch of Emily's shortcut. Sarah recorded it on her phone. "This is kind of beautiful, Dad, in a poetic justice sort of way." "It's just irrigation," I said, but I smiled. Friday morning, I drove to town for the warning signs. The hardware store had exactly what I needed: reflective yellow plastic, weather-resistant, professionally printed. I bought 8 too large ones that said "Private property, no trespassing," 4 medium-reading automatic irrigation active, 6 to 8 a.m. daily, and 2 smaller ones marked motion-activated sprinklers in use. The clerk rang them up without comment, though I caught her glance at the mud on my boots and the look of someone wondering what story she'd just stepped into. On the way home, I passed the Meadowbrook entrance. A landscaping crew was trimming the median bushes. Everything perfect. Everything controlled. I wondered if Emily understood that control was an illusion, that you could make all the rules you wanted. But reality didn't care about bylaws. That afternoon, Sarah and I mounted the signs every 40 feet along her path, high enough to be visible from a vehicle. I photographed each one with my phone. GPS coordinates and timestamps embedded. 6 warnings. 6 clear chances to turn around. If she ignored them, that was on her. The mail came late Friday. I was washing up for dinner when Sarah brought in a thick, cream-colored envelope with the Meadowbrook Estates logo embossed in gold. Certified mail. She set it on the table with a look that said she already knew what it was. I dried my hands and opened it. Final warning of violation. 2 pages on heavy stock paper. They'd upgraded from the courtesy notice to the nuclear option. The letter cited my visible farm equipment, unkempt exterior structures, and failure to maintain aesthetic standards per bylaws 8.2 and 8.7. It demanded compliance within 14 days or face daily fines of $100 and potential legal action for diminished property values. The closing line read, "We trust you will act as a responsible neighbor." It was signed in Emily's perfect script. I read it twice, then set it on the table next to my own stack of papers. 5 videos of Emily's trespassing. Agricultural water use notification with Mike Torres's signature. Photos of 6 warning signs with GPS stamps. A spreadsheet showing $480 in damages. Deputy Williams's card with "Keep Records" written on the back. The contrast wasn't lost on me. Her letter was printed on fancy paper with gold trim, delivered by certified mail, threatening me with lawyers and fines. My documentation was black and white photocopies, handwritten notes, and mud-stained receipts. But mine had something hers didn't. Truth. Sarah read the letter over my shoulder. Her jaw tightened. $100 a day for having a working farm. I folded the letter carefully and slid it back into the envelope. They can try. What about the irrigation system? I looked at the clock. 8:47 p.m. In less than 10 hours, the timer would activate for the first time. 6 a.m. sharp. If Emily followed her pattern, she'd drive through at 7:15 a.m. Monday morning, exactly as she had for the past 3 weeks. Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, consistent as clockwork. "It'll be running," I said. "Automatic, just like the signs say." Sarah sat down across from me. "You think she'll actually drive through after all this?" I opened my laptop and pulled up the camera footage from the past 2 weeks. 7:15 a.m., plus or minus 3 minutes, every single time. "Yeah," I said. "I do." She was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "Dad, you're kind of a genius." "I'm just a farmer." "Sarah, farmers know about timing. Plant too early, and frost kills your crop. Plant too late, drought gets you. But plant at the right time, with the right preparation." I closed the laptop. Things tend to work out. That night I barely slept. Not from nerves, from anticipation. At 5:30 Saturday morning, I was on the porch with coffee, watching the sky lighten from black to deep blue to pale orange. The timer clicked over at 6 a.m. exactly. I heard the solenoid valve open with a soft thunk, then the hiss of water pressure building in the lines. 30 seconds later, all 8 sprinklers activated in sequence. Water arced through the dawn air, catching the early light, turning the pasture into a temporary rainbow. It was, I had to admit, kind of beautiful. The system ran for exactly 2 hours, then shut off automatically at 8 a.m. I checked my phone. The camera recorded everything. Timer logs confirmed activation. All systems nominal. I finished my coffee and went to feed the cows. Monday morning was going to be very interesting. Monday morning came with a stillness that felt deliberate. 6:52 a.m., and I was on the porch with my 3rd cup of coffee, tablet balanced on my knee showing 4 camera angles. Sarah stood in the doorway in sweatpants and a hoodie, her own coffee steaming in the cool air. The sun was just clearing the tree line, burning off the low fog, just birds and the occasional low from the herd, the kind of quiet that comes before something breaks. My eyes stayed on the screen. Camera 1 showed the wide view of Emily's usual path. At the bottom of each feed, a digital clock counted forward. 6:52:17, 18, 19. Sarah moved to stand beside me. "What if she doesn't come?" I took a sip of coffee. "She will. Emergency HOA meeting at 9 a.m. She'll want to get there early." "How do you know?" Linda forwarded me the agenda. Top item, pursuing legal action against non-compliant adjacent property owners. Sarah's breath caught. "You nervous?" I thought about it. 3 weeks of trespassing, property damage, threats, and here I sat, waiting for an irrigation system to do what I couldn't. "No," I said, more curious than anything. At 7:13, I heard it. That low rumble of a 6-cylinder engine. Sarah heard it too. She straightened, coffee cup frozen halfway to her mouth. The sound grew louder. At 7:14:33, the Range Rover appeared at the northeast edge of the frame, rolling through the gap in the trees, white paint gleaming. No hesitation. Phone visible in her hand against the steering wheel. Same route, same speed, same disregard. "Right on time," I said. At 7:15:02, the Rover crossed into Sensor 1's detection range. The red indicator blinked. Then the sound, even from the porch. A sharp industrial hiss, like a hydrant opening. The sprinkler pivoted and released a solid stream of water directly onto the windshield. Emily's face in the camera. Eyes wide, mouth open. She hit the brakes hard. The tires locked on wet grass, and it slid forward. Fishtailing. Water poured over the hood, streaming down the windows. Her windshield wipers kicked on, flailing uselessly. Then, Sensor 2 activated. Water from the passenger side now, hitting the door and mirror. The Rover jerked forward as Emily hit the gas. Wrong move. Sensor 3 lit up. Then 4. She was in the kill zone now. Water coming from everywhere, like she'd driven into a car wash without walls. Through the cameras, I could see her frantically working the steering wheel. Phone dropped somewhere out of sight. Water sheeted across every window. Sarah's hand covered her mouth, shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. I just watched, documented. At 7:15:18, Emily accelerated hard. The tires spun in mud, churning up grass. She gained traction and shot forward. Sensors 5 and 6 activated in sequence. The spray followed her like a spotlight. You could see her through the window. Soaked, hair plastered to her face, mascara running. Her expression wasn't angry. It was shocked. Disbelief. Like reality had just broken a rule she thought was absolute. At 7:15:35, Sensors 7 and 8 caught her at the exit. One final cascade. And she was through, fishtailing onto the dirt road. The sprinklers shut off automatically. Total time 51 seconds. I replayed it immediately. Couldn't help myself. Camera 1 showed the wide shot. The Rover entering frame like it owned the world. Camera 2 caught the exact moment the first sprinkler activated. Water hitting the windshield with enough force to make the vehicle shudder. Camera 3 had the best angle. A side view showing Emily's face transitioning from casual distraction to shock to panic in less than 5 seconds. Her mouth formed words I couldn't hear, but could imagine. Camera 4 captured the exit. The Rover's brake lights flashing red through the spray. Tires spinning in mud that hadn't been there before the watering started. I watched it 3 times. Each viewing revealed something new. The way her phone flew from her hand at the 12-second mark. The moment at 18 seconds when she tried to accelerate and the wheels just spun. The final spray at 34 seconds completely obscured the rear window. 51 seconds that condensed 3 weeks of frustration into pure, legal, documented resolution. I thought about my dad, who'd have loved this. About my wife, who'd have told me I was crazy but would have helped anyway. About the fence posts that had stood for 37 years before Emily Rhodes decided they didn't matter. I looked at Sarah, still trying not to laugh, and felt something settle in my chest. Not victory, not revenge, just the quiet satisfaction of a problem solved correctly, the right way, the legal way, the only way that would let me sleep at night and teach my daughter that you didn't need to become what you were fighting against. You just needed to be smarter, more patient, and willing to let someone else's choices catch up with them. The sprinklers had done their job. Now we'd see if Emily had learned hers. I sat back. The porch was quiet again except for dripping water and Sarah's barely controlled breathing. She looked at me, eyes bright. "Dad, that was—" She couldn't finish, just started laughing. I let myself smile. "Free car wash," Sarah said, deadpan. "Courtesy of Bennett Farm." I took a sip of coffee. "No soap needed." That broke her. She doubled over laughing. I shook my head, grinning. We stayed there for a minute, letting the moment settle. Then my phone rang. "Linda Chen." "Tom. Oh my God, I just saw Emily drive past and her car is soaked. What happened?" I kept my voice neutral. "Could be my irrigation system. It runs automatically from 6 to 8 a.m. I posted signs." Pause. "You posted signs." 6 of them. Reflective. Along the entire path. She laughed. A real laugh. Tom, you're a genius. Just a farmer with grass to water, I said. 2 minutes later, a text from George Miller. Saw the whole thing from my kitchen window. Bravo! At 7:30, my email pinged. Deputy Williams. Tom, received a call from Mrs. Rhodes about malicious vandalism. I reviewed your setup over the weekend. Seems legal from what I can tell. But brace yourself. She might file a civil complaint. Well done staying within bounds. I read it twice. Seems legal? Brace yourself. Not quite full endorsement, but realistic. At 8:15, the Range Rover was back, staying on the road this time. Emily stopped on Oakmont Drive and got out. Even from a distance, you could see she'd changed clothes, but her hair was still damp. She walked to the nearest sign. Automatic irrigation active. 6:08 a.m. daily. Stood there reading it for a full minute. Then she looked directly at camera 1. She knew I was watching. Her face had changed. No confidence, no dismissive smile, just recognition. The kind that comes when you realize you've been outplayed. She got back in the Rover and drove away. Slowly. The long way. Sarah had been watching over my shoulder. She knows. Yeah. What now? I checked the time. 8:50 Fipworth. Now we wait. Linda called again at 9:40. I put her on speaker. Tom, you need to hear this. In the background, I could hear voices. Lots of them. The meeting was chaotic. Emily's voice came through. Strained. We're here to discuss ongoing violations of community standards. A man's voice interrupted. We're here to discuss you driving through Tom Bennett's farm. Again, silence. Then a woman. I saw you this morning. Emily, your car was soaked. George Miller's voice. Sharp. He has every right to water his grass, on his own property, with posted warning signs. The room erupted. I've seen you take that shortcut at least 3 times. There's video everywhere. Then Marcus Rhodes' voice. Quiet but carrying. Emily, resign. Dead silence. Marcus! Emily Sahad. Her voice cracked. You need to resign. Now. You violated the law multiple times. I told you to stop last month. I can't defend this. I heard movement. A chair scraping. Footsteps. A door closing. Long silence. Then George Miller. I move that we accept Emily Rhodes' resignation. Effective immediately. Second. All in favor. A chorus of ayes. Not triumphant. Just relieved. Sarah looked at me. It's over. I thought about 3 weeks of trespassing and threats. About Emily's face this morning. Soaked and shocked. About Marcus finally saying what he should have said weeks ago. Not completely, I said. But close enough. I walked out to the pasture, Sarah following. The grass was still wet from the morning watering. The sprinkler system sat silent. 8 sensors watching over empty ground. No tire tracks, no broken fences, just grass and water and quiet satisfaction. You think she learned anything? Sarah asked. I looked toward Meadowbrook Estates, hidden behind trees. Maybe. That's up to her. We stood there listening to the cows and birds and normal sounds of a farm that would keep being a farm. Long after this drama faded, Sarah said, I'm proud of you. Dad, you didn't lose your temper, didn't do anything crazy, just used your head. I put my arm around her shoulders. Sometimes that's enough. 2 days after the sprinkler incident, 3 cars pulled up to my farm at 10 a.m. I was replacing a section of fence near the road when I saw them coming. Linda Chen's Lexus SUV, a Honda Accord with a young couple I'd seen at meetings, George Miller's old pickup. They parked in a line and got out slowly, like they were approaching something fragile. Linda carried a plate covered in foil. George had his hands in his pockets. The young couple, Jake and Amy Morrison, stayed close together. I set down my hammer and walked over. Linda spoke first. Tom, we came to apologize. I wiped my hands on my jeans. Apologize for what? For letting Emily do what she did, for not speaking up. Her voice was quiet but steady. We all saw it, and we stayed silent. George stepped forward. I've been in this neighborhood 6 years. Got fined $500 once for painting my shutters the wrong shade of gray. I was afraid to cross her. Amy Morrison's voice shook slightly. We were too. It's not an excuse, but it's the truth. I looked at the four of them standing in my driveway. Regular people who'd been pushed around by someone who forgot that power was supposed to serve people, not control them. I understand, I said. HOA presidents can make life difficult. Linda shook her head. That doesn't make it right. We should have stood with you at that meeting. George nodded. So we're here to say we're sorry, and to tell you Emily's out, voted out 48-2 yesterday afternoon. Who's the new president? I asked. Linda looked embarrassed. They asked me. I said no at first, but George convinced me someone needed to do it, who actually cared about neighbors, not just property values. She paused. And we want to offer you a position, agricultural liaison. You'd have a voice in any decision that affects your land or other properties bordering ours. I was surprised. I don't live in the HOA. That's the point, George said. You're affected by our decisions but have no say. That's not right. We're changing the bylaws. I thought about it for a moment. These people had driven out here, admitted they were wrong, and were trying to make it right. That took something. I'll think about it, I said. But thank you for coming. Linda handed me the plate. Banana bread, homemade. Least I could do. They left a few minutes later, and I stood there holding warm banana bread wrapped in foil, feeling something shift, the weight I'd been carrying for 3 weeks. The constant edge of waiting for the next violation started to ease. That afternoon, Deputy Williams stopped by, not in his cruiser this time, just his personal truck. He got out and leaned against the tailgate. Heard Emily filed a complaint. Yeah, Sheriff laughed it off, told her to take the long route. I felt tension. I didn't know I was holding release from my shoulders. Appreciate you letting me know. Williams looked out over the pasture. Tom, I've been doing this job 20 years. Seen a lot of people wronged. Most get angry and do something stupid that makes it worse. He turned to me. You didn't. You stayed legal. Used your head. That matters. Didn't have much choice, I said. I have a daughter who needs to see how to handle things right. Williams nodded. You gave her a good example. Hell, you gave this whole county one. He pushed off from the truck. Law works when people like you use it the right way. Not as a weapon, as a shield. He got in his truck and rolled down the window. Keep those sprinklers running. Deer season's coming. He winked and drove off. I spent the rest of the afternoon doing normal farm work, feeding the herd, checking water troughs, fixing a gate hinge that had been squeaking for a month. Sarah came home from the library and found me in the barn. You've been online today? I shook my head. No. Why? She pulled up her phone. The video's everywhere. Someone recorded Emily driving through this morning and it's all over the internet. I looked at the screen. A grainy phone video, probably shot from someone's window, showing the Range Rover getting doused by sprinklers. The caption read, HOA president gets instant karma. 22,000 views. Comments in the hundreds. This is the most North Carolina justice I've ever seen. I need this system for my mother-in-law. Karen got rinsed, literally. I handed the phone back. I didn't post that. I know, but it's out there now. People are calling you a hero. I went back to the gate hinge. I'm not a hero. Sarah, I'm just a guy who wanted people to stay off his land. She smiled. Sometimes that's the same thing. Late that afternoon, a black Mercedes pulled up. Marcus Rhodes. He got out slowly. No sunglasses this time. Tie loosened. He looked 10 years older than the last time I'd seen him. I was on the porch with iced tea. Tom. Marcus. He came up the steps, but didn't sit. I came to apologize. For Emily. She can't do it herself right now. She's staying with her sister in Raleigh. I didn't want to destroy your family, I said. He let out a bitter laugh. You didn't. Emily did that on her own. I warned her for months. The power went to her head. She stopped listening to anyone, including me. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. This is a check for $750. Covers your fence repairs, and then some. Consider the extra for your daughter's college fund. I looked at the envelope, but didn't take it immediately. I don't need emotional distress money. It's not that. It's me trying to do one thing right in this mess. He said it on the porch railing. Thank you for not going further than you had to. You could have ruined her completely. That wasn't the goal. I said. Just wanted respect. Marcus nodded and started down the steps. He stopped halfway. You're a better man than most would have been. I watched him drive away, then picked up the check. $750. I'd deposit it tomorrow. That evening, an email came through from Linda Chen with the HOA logo. Subject, formal apology and policy changes. I opened it. The HOA was officially apologizing for Emily's trespassing, for harassment about my property's appearance, and for failing to act on my complaints. Effective immediately, all aesthetic violations against me were dismissed. They were installing no-through traffic signs. They invited me to join as an agricultural liaison. The last line read, "Your restraint and lawful approach is a model for our community." I forwarded it to Sarah with a single word. Huh, she replied immediately. You going to accept? I looked out the window toward Meadowbrook Estates. The lights were coming on in houses across the development. I couldn't see any Range Rovers cutting through my pasture, just empty grass and the sprinkler system standing watch. I'll go to one meeting, I typed back. See if they mean it. 2 weeks after everything had settled, Sarah and I spent a Saturday morning planting wildflowers along the northeast border where Emily